Every day, nearly one-fifth of the world's oil passes through a narrow strip of water between Iran and Oman. It is only about 30 kilometers wide in some places. But this small passage controls a huge part of the global energy supply. If this route were suddenly blocked, oil prices could surge, global markets could panic, and military tensions in the Middle East could rise within hours. This strategic chokepoint is known as the Strait of Hormuz, and for decades, it has been one of the most sensitive and closely watched waterways on Earth. To understand why the world fears this narrow channel could trigger a major crisis, we need to explore its geography, its history, and its role in modern geopolitics. The Strait of Hormuz lies between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. On one side sits Iran. On the other side are Oman and the United Arab Emirates. This narrow waterway acts as the main exit for oil produced in the Persian Gulf. Countries such as Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates rely on this passage to ship their energy exports to the rest of the world. Massive oil tankers travel through the strait every day, carrying crude oil and natural gas toward Asia, Europe, and beyond. Because so many major oil producers depend on this route, even a small disruption here can ripple across the global economy. Energy markets, shipping companies, and governments closely monitor this waterway at all times. In many ways, the Strait of Hormuz functions as the world's most important oil highway. The importance of the Strait of Hormuz grew dramatically during the second half of the 20th century. As oil production expanded across the Persian Gulf, global demand for energy increased rapidly. By the 1970s, Gulf oil had become a cornerstone of the international economy. Supertankers carrying millions of barrels of oil began traveling regularly through the strait. This meant that any conflict or disruption in the region could potentially affect energy prices worldwide. Because of this strategic importance, major global powers became deeply interested in protecting the security of this waterway. The United States, in particular, began maintaining a strong naval presence in the region to ensure the flow of oil remained uninterrupted. One of the most dangerous moments in the history of the Strait of Hormuz occurred during the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s. As the conflict intensified, both sides began targeting oil tankers traveling through the Persian Gulf. This period became known as the Tanker War. Commercial ships were attacked with missiles, mines, and naval strikes. Oil tankers belonging to neutral countries were also caught in the conflict. In response, the United States launched a naval operation to escort and protect shipping vessels passing through the area. American warships began patrolling the waters to ensure that oil exports could continue. The episode demonstrated just how vulnerable this narrow passage could be during times of conflict. Even decades later, the Strait of Hormuz remains a geopolitical flashpoint. Iran controls the northern coastline of the strait and maintains a strong naval presence in the region. Meanwhile, the United States Navy's Fifth Fleet operates nearby, along with naval forces from several allied countries. Whenever tensions rise between Iran and Western nations, concerns quickly grow about the safety of ships passing through the waterway. Incidents involving oil tankers, naval patrols, and drone surveillance have all contributed to an atmosphere of constant tension. And this is why the world continues to ask one critical question. Because of its geography, Iran holds significant strategic leverage over the Strait of Hormuz. In times of rising tension, Iranian officials have occasionally suggested that they could block or disrupt traffic through the Hormuz Strait if their national security or oil exports were threatened. Closing the strait would not necessarily require a full naval blockade. Even smaller actions such as deploying naval mines, launching anti-ship missiles, or harassing commercial vessels could create enough risk to halt shipping traffic. Oil tankers and shipping companies would likely avoid the area immediately. Insurance costs would skyrocket, and global markets could react within hours. This is why the Strait of Hormuz is often described as the world's most important energy choke point. If shipping through the Strait of Hormuz were disrupted, the consequences could spread far beyond the Middle East. Nearly 20% of the world's traded oil passes through this narrow corridor. Major economies in Asia, including China, India, Japan, and South Korea, depend heavily on oil transported through the strait. Even Western economies could feel the impact through global energy markets. Oil prices could surge dramatically. Shipping costs would increase. Stock markets could react with sudden volatility. Energy shortages could appear in some regions if disruptions lasted long enough. In a highly interconnected global economy, a crisis in a small waterway can quickly become a worldwide concern. Because of these risks, the Strait of Hormuz is also one of the most heavily monitored waterways on Earth. The United States maintains naval forces in the region through its Fifth Fleet. Several allied countries also conduct patrols and maritime security operations nearby. If the strait were seriously threatened, international naval forces would likely move quickly to ensure the passage remained open. This could lead to dangerous military confrontations at sea. Fast attack boats, surveillance drones, submarines, and missile systems all play roles in the complex military balance around the strait. Even a small incident could escalate quickly in such a tense environment. Because of the vulnerability of the Strait of Hormuz, some countries have attempted to develop alternative export routes. Saudi Arabia, for example, operates pipelines that can transport oil from the Persian Gulf to ports on the Red Sea. The United Arab Emirates has built a pipeline that allows some of its oil exports to bypass the strait and reach the Gulf of Oman directly. However, these alternatives can only handle a portion of the region's total energy exports. Most Gulf oil still depends on ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. This means the waterway remains a critical artery for global energy supply. The Strait of Hormuz may appear small on a map, but its strategic importance is enormous. For decades, this narrow passage has stood at the center of global energy trade, regional security, and international diplomacy. It is a place where geography, politics, and economics collide. Every tanker that passes through it carries more than just oil. It carries the stability of energy markets and the balance of power in one of the world's most complex regions. And as tensions in the Middle East continue to evolve, the world will keep watching this narrow stretch of water very carefully. Because sometimes the most important places in global politics are also the smallest.